Yeah, I think it's recording now. Do you see it as well, Tim? Yeah, it does. Perfect. Well, welcome to this webinar. We're going to be talking a bit about power markets and regulation on flexibility today. My name is Anders. I'm going to be the moderator on this webinar today, and I'm just going to say welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining here. So as a formality, the webinar is going to be recorded, so please turn off the camera and microphone. And if you have any questions during this webinar, please place it in the chat function, and I will try to read them through the webinar. And we're going to do a little Q&A after each presentation. And today's speakers is the advisory house. Florian is going to be speaking for them. He has done a very interesting project previously, the barriers on power markets in Europe. He will be talking a bit about that. Then we also have ane.energy, which Kristian is going to be speaking from. He's have a lot of knowledge on the German side of the power markets there, and he's going to be talking a bit about that. Then we have Line from Energinet, who's going to be talking a bit about the Danish power markets and some of the regulation here, or maybe also the balancing markets. And lastly, we're going to have Pierre from Neogrid, who's going to be talking a bit about his solutions as an aggregator on heat pumps. But just to say a bit about the context of today, these are the things we're going to be talking about, like European power markets and barriers here. We're also going to try and understand the German and Danish power markets a bit better. Here, having some speakers from the German side of the power market and also from the Danish side. We're going to have an underlying focus on flexibility and solutions here as well. So overall, the reason why we are here today is because of the Danish-German storage of renewable energy project we have, DG Store, which is funded by Interreg and the German-Denmark program. We started this project back in 2020 with 7 innovative showcases. Here we're working with improving local utilization and regional renewable sources, and we're going to try and look at flexibility and storage solutions here. So that's the context of this webinar today, and we're going to have Pierre presenting some of the things they're working on. And otherwise, if you're interested in some of these things, so you can also visit the DG Store website and LinkedIn and follow us there to see any developments on the projects and the showcases. So the program, we have a small welcome here by me. Then we're going to have Florian speaking next about the European barriers in retail power markets. After that, we're going to have Kristian Reincke. He's going to be talking about the German power market as it is today. And after that, we're going to have Line Kamp from Energinet. She's going to be talking about the Danish power market characteristics and the future of flexibility markets. And lastly, we're going to have Pierre from Neogrid, who's going to be talking about flexibility solutions and some of the barriers he sees in the Danish power markets. So I'm going to be stopping my presentation so Florian can start his.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you very much, Anders, for the nice introduction. I'm going to share my screen, and Anders, I will be looking at you. I guess if you can see it, then it should be fine. Otherwise, please just let me know. Yeah, okay, thanks for the feedback. Wonderful. Yes, hi everybody. My name is Hirschbichler, Florian from the advisory house, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to kickstart this very interesting webinar. And I'm doing so by presenting a project which has caused a lot of pleasure, but also pain, I have to say. We were running this project over a duration of more than 2 years with many, many people involved. It's called European Barriers in Retail Energy Markets. And I'm very happy to provide kind of an overview. I can only provide an overview in this kind of time slot, but hopefully this is a good kickstart. If there are any questions, please feel free to raise the hand, jump in. We are not too large of a group, so I think we can do that during the session as well. Otherwise, what I have prepared is the introduction. Of course, first, I would like to give you an overview of what methodology we were using, what we were actually doing in this project. Then I would like to move on to the key findings. I will also focus there a little bit more on Germany and Denmark, of course, as this is the focus area here. Then I would like to present some results regarding the so-called barriers index, and then we can have an open discussion in case there are any kind of questions. Yeah, so let's directly jump into the introduction. As I said before, this study has been conducted for the European Union, specifically the Commission, DG ENA, within a time period of 2 years. So we started beginning of 2019 and completed the whole project in 2021, beginning of 2021. So therefore, please bear in mind that the current situation is not directly reflected, of course, in this in this project itself. I will come to that a little bit later, but overall, the time period where we were collecting the data was around 2019, 2020. So some of the things might be a little bit out of date, but then at the same time, regulation is not changing, in most cases, not too rapidly. So I guess that 95% of our findings are still true. That would be my assumption here. I think what's important to mention is that this project overall was the Commission's most comprehensive attempt to map the barriers to competition in retail energy segment up to date. And I think it took some of the people involved from the DG ENA side, it took them many years to actually push to get a project like this done. You can probably imagine raising all those barriers is not only causing you to make friends. There are many people out there who are basically creating those barriers, and they are, of course, can be opponents of raising those things and making it more transparent. So therefore, I think it was a great step by the European Commission to start with creating the transparency, which is necessary. And of course, we were not doing this alone. Our consultancy, the advisory house, is focused on the ASG region, so the DACH region. So therefore, we were working together in a consortium. We were focusing on Central Europe. MRC was focusing on the south of Europe, REC on the east, and VASA ETT was focusing on the northern regions, and that's how we split the work a little bit. Yes, so what we did there, our focus was actually to come up with a competitor perspective review of the barriers facing at the moment the competitors in European retail energy markets. So that basically means gas and energy, covering all the European markets. We excluded later on then, if you want to, Switzerland, because actually most of the markets are closed there. They are just opening up right now, and the focus was on barriers which are existing and the competitors are facing for entry. So if a new market, a new competitor is entering the market, but also not only then, but there are also certain barriers which are hindering the continuous growth of some of the competitors as well. So this was the focus, and the general objective was, as I mentioned before, first step is always creating awareness and raising the necessary transparency, creating that transparency in order to motivate beneficial reforms, specifically by national authorities. This was very important because at the beginning, some people thought what we are doing there is evaluating the job of NRAs, for example, of the national regulators. That was not our job there. We were just looking at the competitors in the market, and we wanted to understand their biggest pains. And in most of the cases, the solutions or proposals we were coming up with had nothing to do with the NRAs not doing their job, but it's everything around national regulation and reshaping this national regulation. Yeah, having said that, I think it was very important to reveal the possible future scope as well, especially when it comes to cooperation and EU-wide regulation, because there are barriers you will see which are related to if you are active. I think in the Danish market, it's similar to the Austrian market. It's relatively small, and just as an example there, if you have a very specific country-specific regulation, it's very hard to actually, as a competitor, to move from the Danish or Austrian market to the next market, for example, because you have to completely adjust all your IT systems and so on and so forth and your processes. So overall, the result are 28 comparative country handbooks and process maps. With process maps, what we mean by that is that, for example, onboarding new customers, the switching process, all of this is described in process maps as an attachment to the country handbooks as well. So it should also guide, it should also serve as a guidance for new entrants as well. And one summary report, a so-called barriers index report. Overall, thousands, hundreds, 1,800 plus pages of content. And I think that the more important part is that we had more than 500 engaged stakeholders, and that includes people from governments, from NRAs, that includes companies which are coming from, or people coming from incumbents, or also, let's say, new competitors in the market. Yeah, and that's the outcome. You can find everything online. I'll share the link afterwards. You can download all the individual handbooks, the overall reports. It's all on the EU homepage. Yeah. Maybe quickly what we did there, I think I touched upon a couple of things already. What we tried to do, or what our prerequisites were, quite clear: comparability, neutrality, and confidentiality. So we had interviews, we had a survey, getting a lot of feedback from the market participants, but we had to make sure that this is treated confidentially. Of course, some people or new competitors are actually, in some countries, are afraid to come out with their criticism because they have the fear that they will be treated in a negative way by, for example, a DSO later on. I'll get to that in a second as well. So therefore, we really had to make sure we are working carefully there. Limitations, of course, there are limitations to an analysis like this. You cannot compare markets one by one. Of course, many things are there because of a good reason, historically grown, for example. The markets are continuously developing, as I mentioned before, even over the time period of 2 years, some things changed. So again, I think that the reports are still valid, but I think it's also important to do this exercise again on a regular basis and reevaluate how the countries and the barriers changed over a certain time period. And last but not least, interpretation is hardly avoidable. Yes, of course, because we, on the one hand side, we have a qualitative part where we were conducting interviews, and the barriers that have been raised, we were trying to check again and see if we can prove those things, but not everything is always that easily possible. And therefore, this was also one of the reasons why we wanted to have a more quantitative approach as well. And this is why we came up with this barriers index. I will show you in a second. So the information sources we were using, literature review is always a good place to start, of course. We were looking through more than 100 reports across Europe to check how to approach the topic of barriers and what barriers could be. Then again, the support of the NRAs, feedback of market participants, of course, our expert network coming from the different consortium members, and of course, data collection, especially for the index. And the outcomes I've already mentioned before, the handbooks, the barrier index, the overall report, just to mention a few. So what was the result? The result was that our, let's say, our short list of barriers was 45 individual barriers we have identified, and we started to call barriers. Of course, to make it a little bit more understandable, we grouped those barriers into categories, and those categories we actually grouped again into blocks. And this is something I would like to start with, explaining here how we have structured that, because it already shows a lot in which direction those barriers were raised, or in which area those barriers were raised. First, block regulatory disincentivization. So, and this consists of the categories price regulation. Of course, luckily, only in a few markets, price regulation is still, let's say, a pain. In many countries, price regulation is completely obsolete now. But still, throughout Europe, you still have some countries, especially also in the gas area, where price regulation is a topic. And what the problem there is actually in most of the cases, how do you derive the regulated price, right? If we think about, just to mention one example, France, if you look at the regulated price there, it's derived from basically a generation infrastructure you have built many years ago, and it's very hard to compete on this regulated price, which is determined by a defined formula. Anyways, that's the main problem there. Burden sharing obviously is a big challenge. Regulatory unpredictability in different areas, regulatory unpredictability in terms of environment, regulatory unpredictability, maybe here in this respect regarding digitalization, is something that we have seen broadly, that the market participants are just concerned about how the regulation will move on in the future and how it will be shaped. And of course, you need to have a proper planning horizon to work in this environment. Access to innovation, definitely a big challenge. We'll get to that in a second as well. Market inequality, a very big block dealing with unbundling and market power. In many areas, we have some kind of unbundling in place, of course, due to EU regulation, but unbundling is not unbundling. And especially when it comes to ownership unbundling, we still have countries where this is a big challenge. And related to that, the market power, which is actually exercised by some of the incumbents due to this not ownership unbundling. Then the other topic here is equal access to and maturity of wholesale market, especially for Germany and Denmark. This is not something where we identified bigger challenges. I need to check again, but this is at the moment what we saw there. Operational and procedural hindrances, sign up and operations compliance. So how complicated is it to get, let's say, a retail license? In some areas, you just need to fill something out and you basically provide a margin and you are fine. In other countries, this is a very complicated process. And then I think also for this audience here, data access and processes, I think this is one of the most crucial enablers for digitalization or for innovation, because if you don't have data access, it's very hard to build new and innovative products. And this is a challenge throughout Europe, nearly in every market. And last but not least, customer inertia. So this is dealing with the topic of, do the customers actually care? Are they just happy, or do they just not put too much emphasis on energy at all? I think this topic is the topic that definitely changed due to to the massive increase in retail energy market prices over the last months. So that might be the only one where I think something changed substantially over the last 2 years. The other things are more or less unchanged. For just quickly the methodology for the index, as I said before, the barriers were derived by interviews, surveys, and analysis of the reports available, and that was a more qualitative approach. The quantitative approach was basically looking at all the barriers I've shown before, and then we thought about what kind of KPIs could help us analyzing if those barriers do exist or not, and to which extent. And that's why we came up with different indicators, and those indicators were following, of course, a specific methodology as well and criteria how to come up with it. And then we were grouping them together, and the result was a composite indicator, our so-called barriers index, which should allow you to also run this, let's say, every 3 years. That's what we discussed with the Commission at one point in time, to see how that the countries are also changing. So that's basically the quantitative counterpart to the barriers we have identified. And now let's get to the probably more interesting section here. That's the overview of the key findings. Sorry, that's a little bit much if you see that, but that's the overview of all the 45 barriers I've described before, categorized in categories, and here it's called group, but before I called it blocks. And that's the overall picture. Here on the right, you can see the list of all the markets we have analyzed, highlighted in blue. I'm happy to share the slides, of course. Highlighted in blue where this was identified as a problem. Also highlighted in green is actually where we identified best practice examples. Again, this was for us one goal as well, to point out that some countries have found a very good solution for common problems, and this should be a guidance for the national authorities to look at those countries and see if they can learn something from them. So I'm not going into the details here. What I want to highlight here is the most prominent barriers throughout Europe. I've mentioned that before. Advantage of vertically integrated market players is definitely one of the top challenges we have. We still don't have ownership unbundling throughout Europe. There are many exemptions of also other unbundling categories as well. In Germany, we have this regulation that this de minimis rule, depending on the customer base size of the DSO, you might be exempt. That covers in Germany a lot of the market actually, because many of the smaller regions, again, historically grown, and this is not a criticism that it shouldn't have done that way. The question is just if the de minimis regulation as it is in place right now is fair for the new entrants and the market players who are trying to compete with the incumbents. Low customer awareness or interest was definitely something that has been raised throughout the countries. Again, now that definitely changed, but the question is in which direction and what that actually means, also in terms of market powers shifting towards incumbents. Also something we might want to discuss. Uncertainty around regulatory future for digitalization, uncertainty around current regulatory environment and its development. Then, of course, strategic behavior that's linked to vertically integrated market players. The incumbent have more market power if they are somehow connected to a DSO. That definitely gives you an advantage. But it's not only that. Of course, there's lobbying can be seen throughout European countries that the incumbents, which are historically owned by local governments or regions, have a very good network, of course, and can shape legislation that works for them. Lack of data, I mentioned as well, for innovative product development, wide-reaching price regulation. Again, in most of the cases, it's a problem in gas where it still exists, but not so much in electricity. Luckily, insufficient price signals for end users linked to low customer awareness over here. Also, as mentioned before, is changing now. Missing market value of novel products. So if you run your business case for your new ideas, it's not always working out. There could be that there might be good reasons for that, but in some markets, it's the markets are very biased towards traditional products. Thinking about auxiliary services, for example, and we might hear about that a lot more today. The bid size you have for balancing markets, this is something that is definitely a barrier for new and novel products, and regulation shaped in a way that maybe the traditional utilities and incumbents can compete a lot easier because they have the necessary generation, for example, in the background. Data availability, again, lack of data hub. Yes, in some countries it is. My understanding, and I'm sorry, I tried to learn as much as possible for the Danish market, but the colleagues covered the Danish market. But in Denmark, the data hub, I think, was established some time ago, and I think in Denmark, this was one of the first countries establishing a data hub in this kind of way. Doesn't mean that there is no lack of data problem in place as well, but at least from a general approach towards a data hub, this was regarded quite well and mentioned as a good example. And then I mentioned before, capacity and ancillary services markets discriminate against new and small market players. And then low liquidity in wholesale market. And last but not least, customers do not trust new suppliers or technology. So especially when a new supplier is completely starting from the scratch or also coming from a different country, that's very hard to gain trust. So I mapped that with Denmark and Germany. So you can see that both countries more or less in most of the European-wide barriers were identified in Germany and Denmark as well. Data hub and low liquidity in wholesale markets was not identified. Maybe let's do it the other way around. And wide-reaching price regulation as well. Regarding price regulation, I think there's a little bit of a concern about the margin on the gas sector of the regulated price offering there for Denmark, but that's it. Now, what you can find in the handbook, and for every single barrier of the 45, you can find in there, there's not enough time to go into the details, but you can find if the barrier was identified as existing and described in detail what the findings were, and then what we also tried to identify are possible ways out there. So please have a look at the handbooks if you're interested. What I wanted to share today are the key barriers in Denmark. The area here marked in green with the green background, those are the barriers which are linked to what I've shown before with this overview. So European-wide barriers, which are existing in most of the markets. And then we have some very specific barriers which are specific to a country here on the right. Just to mention some, in Denmark, definitely the advantage of vertically integrated market players and strategic behavior of the incumbent or incumbents was definitely mentioned several times as a challenge for new entrants. Lack of data for innovative product development as well. So the red ones are the ones which have been mentioned several times throughout the interviews. The orange ones were mentioned, but not throughout, let's put it that way. Then existing regulation and roles of actors does not fit novel services. So the way how the standard actors are defined at the moment in the market, does not allow complete flexibility in things you would like to do, especially when it comes to more innovative product development, and regional heterogeneity, sorry, there's a typo in there, in DSO communication and financial requirements was identified in Denmark. Given that you need, there are many DSOs and you need to basically establish a form of communication to all the different DSOs. They require you to provide some financial margin or yeah, let's call it a margin there as well, general financial requirements throughout all those DSOs, and that of course can become a challenge, especially for new market entrants. Yes, that are the key barriers in Denmark. Key barriers in Germany, the high financial requirements is one of the most crucial ones that have been identified. Forced risk during operations. This is specifically also related to suppliers tasked with collecting special taxes, levies, and tariffs on behalf of others. So what we can see there in markets is there are two ways of collecting taxes and levies. For example, any kind of renewable energy, special tax, and one of the things you can do it is you can task the DSO to collect all those special taxes. Let's call it taxes for now, but there are different things there. You can task the DSO, so the regulated business, to do so, or you can task the retailer to do it, the unregulated business. And in Germany, it's quite basically the retailer needs to collect all of the or most of the taxes there, and that's quite burdensome because it's a lot of responsibility you have. Also, in some of the cases, you are actually carrying the risk of non-payment by the customer for those taxes, where this of course is a high financial requirement and causing some of the new players concerns and headaches because they can come up with this financial with those financial requirements. Anything else I would like to raise here for Germany? I guess highly complex or country-specific systems and processes. This is definitely the case in Germany. We're also in Germany, we have many DSOs with partly some different processes you need to follow. The data availability, that's why it's called here low level of digitalization. Smart meter rollout has been delayed several times. It's happening now, but also until every, let's say, a smaller household or smaller consumer is supplied with a smart meter, this still will take some more time. Let's put it that way. So of course, if you are a new innovative market player, you would love to have high granularity, high resolution data, ideally historical data from smart meters. And in Germany, this is right now similar to other countries. Of course, this is very hard to get. Then the third topic is the barriers index. As mentioned before, the barriers index was our approach on the one hand side to quantify the barriers as well, and also provide a benchmark so you can run this index hopefully on a frequent basis, let's say every 3 or 5 years, and then you will see how the countries are moving. What you can see here is now the index results. If you are on the bottom here, that's actually better. It's very important to mention that. Up here, Cyprus, Bulgaria, and Poland are kind of the worst performing countries according to this barrier index for the electricity markets here. Norway, Slovenia, and Sweden are actually leading the pack. You can see here the color coding in there is actually the split towards the blocks or categories we have identified. And Overall, the top barriers are burdensome switching process, quality of data access, and competitive advantage of the vertically integrated companies. And you can see Germany is performing, let's say, at the end of the first quarter or first third here. Denmark is a little bit behind, so more or less in the middle of the European pack when it comes to quantifying those specific barriers. Definitely for Denmark, you can see here also the impact for Denmark, the regulatory burdens and unpredictability were the biggest area of concern here, and that's why it's ranked that high. For Germany, it's actually quite similar. But for Germany, the switching process was highlighted actually more complicated. And then, Anders, is there a question or?
It's only to say you have 8 minutes. So
yeah, thanks. I'm getting to an end. Yeah, thanks. Now, sorry. Last one here, result for the gas market. You can see here Denmark as well as Germany performing a lot better. So they are actually both in the let's say in the top 10 countries here. So overall, there are less concerns and they are performing better in the gas area than the electricity sector. Also, the top barriers, I know gas markets might not be that relevant for here, but again, quality of data access, super important, burdensome switching process, and in the gas sector, it's specifically access to wholesale market. Well, this is something that's, of course, becoming more important now as well. And that's it from my side. I know I was rushing through it, but the idea was really to provide an overview. There are many, some of the other speakers are actually experts in the specific countries and are active as far as I understand. So maybe they can hopefully also prove me right with the barriers I mentioned here. Ideally, they prove me wrong because the barriers don't exist anymore. But I think we might have a couple more minutes for maybe questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Florian. It was very interesting. And if any of the participants have any questions, you can just put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask Florian. And I can see Rasmus Leonard has a question. Could you please give some examples of novel services or new market players and how they experience these barriers? Example given market power of incumbents.
Yeah, happy to do so. So I'll take, for example, an Austrian new market player. This I'm not naming this company here, but it was one of the first players in the Austrian market, now also active in others, but who tried to provide like hourly tariffs basically, and those hourly tariffs were depending, of course, you need a smart meter for that, yeah, and you need the regulation that supports you providing those hourly tariffs, those time of use tariffs, but with hourly benchmarked against the wholesale market, the day ahead price. That's his offer he wanted to do, and there were so many barriers to actually achieve that. First of all, well, smart meters were not there. Fine, that's the case for everybody, right? But of course, if you want to provide a new solution like this, which is attractive for so many use cases in terms of electric vehicle charging, for of course optimizing your storage, if you have one, you need that, right? So even when the smart meters arrived, he did not get the data at all. And if he got the data, he got it with a delay of partly 4 weeks. Yeah, and the original regulation in Austria regarding data provisioning by the DSO was you have a time span of, let's say, 1 day until 4 weeks to provide the data to the retailer. Well, now imagine that you have now, let's think about the DSO, which is responsible for, and I'm not finger pointing here, but for the area in Vienna. And now imagine that the utility in Vienna, the incumbent, does not have this solution in place right now, this market offer to provide hourly time of use tariffs. Well, generally, I would argue if you're not completely ownership unbundled, the DSO does not have an incentive to provide the data within 1 day. Quite on the contrary, if they are in a building next to each other and maybe the owner is sitting together with those both companies, that's just an idea, yeah, they could argue, yeah, don't worry, don't be too quick with providing the data to those new entrants, like get to the limit of what you're allowed to do. Now regulation was continuing and now you have to do it actually within, I think, 48 hours or something like that. So that's a lot better, but nonetheless, next thing was, and that's maybe now a long answer, but the next thing is that you were not allowed to clear based on the real smart meter profile, but you still had to use your H0, your standard last profile, to actually procure. So that was completely crazy because he was incentivizing the people to optimize the electricity consumption based on the wholesale market, but on the other hand, him as a retailer, he had to procure the energy based on the standard Lasttarif, and that of course can go in both directions. And this is something, there were many incumbents which were blocking this change in regulation. And just to name a few, one last thing was, if you really require data from a DSO and this is not standardized and you need to send individual emails and you're depending on a person, they're sending you a CSV file, this you probably give up quite soon. I hope that answers the question, but that's a very prominent example, I would say.
Thank you so much, Florian. And if anyone else have any more questions, you can always reach out to Florian, I guess, and ask him for any more detailed answers.
Yeah.
But very interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, just one last thing. I just remember I copied another slide in here for Denmark. Unfortunately, I don't have up-to-date data here, but that's also about unbundling because it is an important topic. The yellow line, what you can see here, is the average price of energy, network, and taxes. So this is what the end user is paying, right? And interestingly, this is not changing or was not changing at all. And you could argue that those, I guess that's 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But you could argue that this is not changing because 8 cents, we believe that this is the price the users are going to pay. And if the electricity price, for example, is going up, interestingly, network tariffs are possible to go down. And the other way around, if the energy price is going down, grid tariffs are going up. So this cross-subsidization, which is still, I believe, the case, but it's let's call it a hot topic, I think is something we need to get rid of somehow, because otherwise you will never be able to compete on a fair level. That's all I wanted to share. I'm happy to share the slides, also the link where you can download the handbooks, and please also feel free to reach out to me in case you need something else.
And just the last question, Florian, before we go next to Kristian. Are you going to be updating the analyses and the results, like as you said, in 3 or 5 years?
We would love to. So we had our last meeting 1 year ago with the Commission. Hopefully we'll have another update there. But this is very political, I have to say. And also DG Anna, in terms of the staffing, there's a new Directorate General, which is generally, I think, a good thing because she's coming from the competition side. But nonetheless, the push needs to come from the Commission to get some budget and making sure that somebody is touching this topic again, because there was a lot of criticism, to be honest, about this, and still going on, which partly might be fair, but partly was also unfair and just a natural reaction of the people that might not be happy with the results shown there.
Got you. If you stop sharing, I guess Kristian can start sharing his slides. And thank you so much, Florian, for the very nice overview and of your results. I'm going to give the word to you, Kristian.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anders, and thanks for having me. I'm having the chance to give a few words on the actual developments in the German power market. I'm leading the department Trading and Analysis at ane.energy. We're a small trading house from the north of Germany. We're having an office in Husum, which is quite close to the Danish border, and another office in Hamburg where I'm currently working. As DG Store is mainly dealing with flexibilities and storage, I'll just try to give some information on the power market in relating to flexibilities and how profitable it is to bring flexibilities in. And in our main business, ane.energy is mainly trading wind parks. We're having a few solar parks, and we are having a few projects with battery storages and some other flexibilities. But this is just a minor share, and it has more like a project character. But we're doing more and more. And we see that in the current market development, which we will see quite soon in the presentation, we see that the need for storage and the profitability of storage is rising drastically currently. So storage and flexibility is a pure winner of the energy crisis currently. Wait a second. As it has just happened yesterday, will give a short information on the solar eclipse we had yesterday, or the partial solar eclipse, because it's just interesting and for sure is also demanding for some kind of flexibility in the market. So yesterday around noon, we had a solar eclipse or a partial solar eclipse, where you can see here how that went. And that for sure has an implication on the PV production in the system. And I'll just show you what that meant yesterday in the German power market. So yesterday we had a second. Why is my slide not going further? There it is. So yesterday we had a solar production in the forecast of close to 20 gigawatts during noon, and the black line, the different color lines, it's just different types of forecast. Don't bother about that. But what you can see is that the black line is the actuals, and you can see that the actuals went down quite a bit. So we had something like 5 to 6 gigawatts less power from solar instead of having no solar eclipse yesterday. So if we would have a clear sky yesterday, then we would have something like 60 gigawatts, and then we would have a reduction yesterday of something like 15 gigawatts of PV. So so also, this happens only every 3 years, but that makes a big difference. In our trading business, and this is also a need for flexibility. We are also always talking about other occurrences, like there's no wind, or there's clouds or whatever, but also the solar eclipse brings the need for flexibility and also for storage in the market. But that was just a short note on that, because it just happened yesterday. What I want to talk about is the spot market and the future market, and give you an outlook and the actual impression of the market prices, because that's the main driver for flexibility and storage in the system. So the more volatility we have in the market, the more profitability there is for storage and flexibility solutions. I don't know if this is clear to everyone, so I put a small slide here to show the difference between the spot market and the future market for power. The spot market basically is a daily auction with hourly products. So we are trading electricity always for the next day, for tomorrow, today basically. and we are trading the electricity in hourly products. That has always a physical delivery. So if we sell power, we need to deliver that power. And that market is driven very fundamentally. So typical drivers are weather, I mean temperature, wind, and solar radiation. That's the main drivers, and for sure also the actual prices for gas, coal, CO2, and so on. There's not much speculation in that market. When we go to the future market, we're trading electricity mostly financially. Some are physical, mostly financially for various products in the future. So you can trade basically the next days, you can trade the next week, the next weekend, but you can also trade the next quarter or the next years, up to, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ahead, depending on how the liquidity in the market is. And there you can have a good impression of what the current expectation is for the electricity prices, and by that you can also get some impression of what probably the volatility will be in the future markets when you look at those prices. And those prices, they are driven also by fundamental factors, but also by technical drivers. But when we, for example, think of a fundamental driver for the future market, and if we look to the Ukraine crisis, then we will see that various developments leading to gas delivery reductions from Russia always have an impact on the future prices. So basically, when there's when the gas deliveries are declining from Russia, and that is going to be public, or the information is going to be public, that will have normally that will have an immediate impact on the future prices, but will probably have no impact on the spot market, because that doesn't change something for tomorrow. And for sure, the future market is more speculative, so it has also technical factors which are driving the market. We are first looking at the spot market, and I give you a box plot here of the last 3 years or 4 years of spot market prices. And what you can see, basically, that prices for sure have risen drastically. So if we look at the average spot price for power in Germany from 2018 to 2020, that has been 35 euro per megawatt hour. And currently, if you look at the median here, we've seen that basically in August, for example, we've been close to 500 euro in the spot market as an average. So that's something like, I don't know, 15 times the value we had years before. So that's a drastic change. But what is more important, actually, and this is why I choose to have the box plot here, is to see the volatility in the market. I mean, you see that even the variance of 50% of all values is getting huge compared to the years before. And if you put the other 50% of the values, the prices also in there, that you can see that the volatility is drastically changing, and the volatility is a pure driver for storage and flexibility solutions. So what we as a trading house actually experience, that more and more companies contact us, and they are getting interested in building batteries and building other storage and flexibility solutions, and they are asking us if we are willing to trade them and if we are willing to optimize them in the different markets. So it is important to see that we have these high prices when you want to operate, if you want to operate storage or flexibility solutions in the market. And by having said that, it is important to look on the future markets to see if we will have that kind of volatility also in the future. And what we see here, I just put you here the base products for the next years, and how they have traded during the last 2 months. Then we can see that actually there have been times late August where the impression of the market was that the base price for electricity for next year could be close to 1,000 euro. I mean, I guess the most expensive trade was something at 1,050 euro per megawatt hour, which is just crazy. Since then, we have seen prices falling or declining continuously. And those kind of effects which we saw here in late August, I mean, that is not pure fundamental factors. That is also because margining in this market is quite difficult, as most of those contracts are financially traded as kind of a swap. You need to have pay your variation margin. I mean, if you sold your electricity at a very low price, I don't know, 1 or 2 years ago for 2023, and now the prices are rising, then you have to pay the variation margin. So the difference between the price you sold the electricity and the price we are seeing currently for the year 2023, you have to pay the gap actually to the exchange or to your OTC partner or wherever, or your broker. And that made it very difficult for many companies to be actually still be able to trade those kind of products. And there have been companies which could not pay the variation margin, and by that they were forced to actually buy back their power they have sold before. And this is probably the case why prices have been peaked so much in such a short time frame. And we have seen those peaks since the beginning of the crisis, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. So that's something which is probably not purely fundamentally driven. And what is interesting also in the future prices, that the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline did not have a big impact on the price developments for the futures. So actually the market is probably already has been thinking before that there might be no gas for the future from Russia anymore. So that is an interesting fact, I would say, as well. What are the main drivers of those markets? That is important to know, to see where the market might be going. Currently, we have, I mean, you figured that out before, we have a tremendously warm autumn currently. So October, the rest of October, so the remainder of October is currently settling 7 degrees above the average we should have, so 7 degrees Celsius above, which means we are hardly using gas compared to historical years. And by that we see that the gas storage levels, they are close to maximum. So in Germany we're somewhere at 97 point, I don't know, 6-7% of filling levels. So many of those storages, they're currently filled up totally, and they are still having contracts where gas is coming in, but the gas consumption in Germany is still very low. So currently we see that actually spot market gas prices are very low. I mean, today they came a bit up, but 2 days ago or 1 day ago, I'm not sure, gas was traded on the spot market for the next day below 30 euros per megawatt hour. And that is actually the price we had years before, way before the crisis. And on the same time, where gas is traded for tomorrow below 30 euro, we see that gas is traded for November above 100 euros. So we see there is a major impact of the high temperatures currently in October, and that the warm temperatures are leading households to not utilize any gas, and so there's flowing more gas in than we can actually utilize, and by that the gas is basically dumped on the spot prices, spot market compared to weeks before. But that will probably only be an effect of a few more days or maybe one or 2 weeks. But when the temperatures are cooling down, then that will for sure change again. On the spot market for power, we also see declining prices, but this is still on a very high level. If you have seen the base prices before, I mean, we are still trading next year somewhere around 400 euros per megawatt hour. So that's still 10 times of what we have seen years before, and that still gives like a huge demand and huge options or possibilities for storage and flexibilities. And yeah, how the next winter will look when we get no gas from Russia during the whole year, that is highly depending on the outcome of this year's winter. So if the winter will continue to be warm, then we will probably also have a good situation for next year's winter. So there is a chance that actually the gas filling levels, they might come out end of the winter somewhere around 50% if we're doing very good. But if the winter is getting cold, and also the aims in Germany to reduce the gas consumptions are not working as they should, then the filling level might be way lower, I don't know, 20-30%, and that will also make next year's winter outcome difficult. And all those fundamental drivers, they have a direct impact on the profitability of storages in the system. And another market which is interesting mainly for batteries currently is the primary reserve market. That's actually nothing at ane we are dealing with at the current time, but we are looking to be working on that market as well. But if you're able as a battery to deliver primary reserves, that seems to be very interesting currently. And I put you the prices here. So what you can actually see, what are the typical prices per megawatt in the different quarters for a week of delivering primary reserves. And what we can see that this year's prices, you see this year in gray, is way above what we have seen in the past, and that this still also within this year is rising. So currently we are seeing basically prices close to 6,000 euro per megawatt per quarter. And what we hear from our customers, which are able to operate batteries or which are planning to operate batteries, that this is a very, very interesting price level to operate batteries just in the primary reserve market. And lastly, I have a small slide. So what does that actually mean for ane.energy? Currently, trading renewable futures there's an extremely high demand for capital. So because of the variation margins, because of other things, it is difficult for small players to be active in that market. And the industry is hardly buying future power, but that's not very interesting for storage and flexibilities. But also trading our renewables on the spot market, this is what we are mainly doing. We see exploding balancing fees, and we see very high risks. And there's also a need for having more flexibility in the portfolio, because currently we are just trading the wind parks. And whenever we have a wrong forecast and we have a gap in between what we have sold and what our current wind parks are producing, then we need to pay the gap by the balancing fees. And when we have a small look on the balancing market, this is just the prices of the balancing market. We have a symmetrical balancing market in Germany of a few days in October. And we have actually seen that within a few days, we have seen 1/4 hour with prices for balancing power down to minus 8,000 euros per megawatt hour. And we have seen another quarter with prices up to 10,000 euro per megawatt hour. That is really a drastic risk for trading renewables in the current market, because you can always have forecast errors and you can always have small deviations in your portfolio. And if you have no flexibility available and you are purely depending on that high prices here, then that comes with a huge risk in your portfolio as a trading company. And therefore, we also experienced that under the current price level, the current highest price level, there's a tremendous need to have more flexibilities to be able to react fast to forecast changes and outcomes of the wind parks and the PV. And what is more, lastly, we are developing a fully automated trading systems for flexibility and storage already for 2 years, something like that. And we are having some products out there, but we are continuously developing those systems, and we are getting more and more the storage and flexibility systems, they're asking us to be their trading company. So it is a very interesting market, and flexibility is currently more needed than we actually thought a few years ago, because a few years ago there wasn't actually, from a trading kind of perspective, there wasn't a high need for flexibility, but that has with the energy crisis changed drastically, and we need those kind of systems right now. That's it from my side. I'm happy to hear some questions from your side and to answer them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kristian. Very insightful and very interesting with these very volatile electricity markets also in the future. I could see Olaf had a hand up. Maybe you can ask something, Olaf. Otherwise, I'm going to take Peter Olsen's question. Do you know what the reason was for the exploding balancing prices?
Well, no, in this case, I don't know, but we see this every now and then, right? I mean, there's the balancing market is difficult. It has always, I mean, probably you can explain it by forecast errors in the renewables. I haven't looked for those occurrences now, but you need to understand that there's also some kind of speculation in that market. So you cannot explain everything purely by the fundamentals of renewables. And sometimes you have, power outages by big power plants. But in this case, I think that there was no special occurrence why that happened. So we just see under those high price levels we are seeing currently that the prices for flexibility, and I mean the balancing prices, is nothing else than delivering flexibility. You can decide: do I put my flexibility on the spot or on the intraday market, or do I put it in the reserve market? And by having great opportunities in the intraday market already, prices for reserving your capacity for the imbalance market that will be way higher. So we will just see those kind of prices as kind of normal. And what is something else, the scheme within the imbalance, Mare and Picasso, some may know that has changed a bit, but I think that's going too deep for this discussion here.
Okay. Olaf Roma, did you have a question? Or otherwise, I have a question for you, Kristian.
I think we can just not hear him.
Yeah, it might be so. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you a question meanwhile. I see that as a company, you're also trading power purchase agreements to some of the big industrial actors out there. In regards to the power purchase agreements, I know for sure in Denmark, there's more talk about putting in flexibility solutions in that power purchase agreement instead of just like having the solar park running at full capacity all the time, but putting in some flexibility solutions in the contracts. Are you looking into that in Germany as well, or do you know anything here?
Yeah, I mean, we have many parties, they say, I'm willing to buy renewable power, but I'm not willing to buy the renewable power as it comes, because then we cannot calculate based on that. If we every day have to look on the forecast, how much electricity you might deliver me tomorrow or during the day, and that will actually change every, I don't know, 15 minutes, then many players, they can't deal with that. So they are asking us if we can have like more steady delivery of power to them, and we are doing this actually, but we are not doing this currently by having flexibilities in our system. We're just doing this by trading the difference on the market, right?
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to move on to I forgot to turn off the microphone or turn on. Thank you so much. There we go. I think I turned on my microphone and I turned it off at the same time. It's beautiful. If Line Kamp is ready for presenting, we will move on to her. And thank you so much, Kristian, for a nice presentation.
Yes.
And obviously, we're going to see if we can send out all the the slides afterwards, so you can look further into that, and always contact Kristian also. But I'm gonna give you the word, Line. I can just say when it's up and running, your presentation.
You see the screen?
I see the screen, but you just have to start presenting. There we go. Perfect. The word is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just turn on my camera. So if the connection becomes bad, let me know. Then I will turn off the camera. Yes, thank you very much. My name is Line, and I work for Energinet, the Danish TSO. I work in the Department of Ancillary Services and Flexibility. I have a background as a trader for Danske Commodities, but I've been in Energinet for the last 5 years. I primarily work with market development inside the capacity markets, but I also touch a lot upon the interaction with new market players, and I will try to dig into both. Anders, please hold me up to the time. I can talk about this for a long time, so let me know if we are close to the end.
I will turn on the camera when you are.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
I will distribute the slides, or I will send them to you, Anders, and then you can distribute them. I have some slides that I don't want to deep dive into because they have a lot of information which you can investigate yourself. So, but well, is this changing? Well, like that. So, as I just said, I work for Energinet, who is the Danish transmission system operator. Means that Energinet, among other things, ensures balance in the electricity system minute by minute. So we have the long-term responsibility and the day ahead, day-to-day responsibility to secure balance in the electricity system in Denmark. So, and how do we do that? We do that, among other things, by well-functioning markets, both nationally, but very much across borders. And this contains trading in all respects, and hereby also the ancillary service markets. So we have done that for many years, and things haven't changed as rapidly as it does right now. The green transition demands or create demands for new tools, and in order for us to secure and balance the electricity system. By bringing a lot of renewable energy into the system, we challenge the way of doing things. We are still supposed to do the same, but I don't want to go deeply into these graphs, but what you can see is that putting more renewable energy into the system, the spikes and the under production according to consumption becomes wider. So the need for balancing increases when we have 100% renewable electricity system. How do we then balance such a 100% renewable energy system? Well, as I just said, we do, as we have always done, try to secure that consumption and production meet at all times. But we also demand new participants to engage in these markets, and one of these participants must come from flexible consumption. We need consumers to take part in maintaining the balance in the grid. We don't have we have technology neutrality in the markets, and we demand flexibility from all different sources. But by now we primarily have the flexibility delivered from larger production units. So if we are to succeed with 100% green energy system, we need the flexible consumption side to participate as well. We have, and how do we do that? And we have discussed very much internally in Energinet what is the role of Energinet in driving these new solutions forward, and what is the role of us, and this more or less shows the way that we are going into this, that we actually believe that the market and the market player should be the driver of the new solutions. We believe that the good ideas emerge in the market and must be driven by market players. It is you who have who can touch upon what is really going on. But we also acknowledge that we have a lot of knowledge, both regarding the markets, but also regarding what we foresee in the future. So we see ourselves in Energinet as some kind of sounding board where the market player can uncover new possibilities, but also get some kind of feedback on the ideas emerging. And so Energinet kind of defines the role as this kind of sparring partner, but it is the market player who puts the idea into action if it's feasible. So what we are really focusing on is that market development is to be done together. We acknowledge that we play a part in as a TSO in kind of managing these processes and speeding these processes up. So we want to integrate both new market players and new market solutions better. And what we are focusing on is that we want to talk less and act more, especially on entry barriers. That means that some entry barriers are difficult for us to remove due to regulatory issues or just due to legislation. But we can at least acknowledge that these barriers exist, and then we can try to do some kind of workarounds. What we also do is to make pilot projects on real market conditions. If you or we have an idea, we can create these small pilots where we can have new market players or existing market players test new ideas on real market conditions, such that we can try these things out in the real world and not in some kind of simulation situation. Then we have a large focus on creating an easy access to data, such that the historical data on prices, on capacities, on demand for ancillary services is easy accessible. And then we really want to perform clear communication, both regarding the existing situation, but also regarding new and coming market developments and market changes. On the other side, we to solve this 100% renewable energy system, or balancing such a system, is that the renewable energy sources must also take part in securing these necessary balancing reserves. For that, we have created a method where capacity from renewable energy sources can participate in the amount of resources and reserves that Energinet procure. That is based on a forecast, a probabilistic forecast, where the market player, the deliver of this from the renewable energy sources shows that the forecast they are working with lives up to a defined quality. So we are in order to have these forms of technologies participate and deliver reserve capacity, Energinet are willing to take part of this risk that we have when we are talking about renewable energy sources. So that is on the flexibility side. On the balancing side, what I want to dig into now is more on this balancing market. What are we talking about when we talk about the balancing market? So just to sum up for this, we need new participants to be able to continue an equal balance between consumption and production. And we see this coming from the consumption side and from the renewable side. We still need the production side, and we don't see any, we are still very much in favor of the power plants that are participating in these markets today. But we see the need for balancing reserves increasing, and we also see the need for new participants to be in there. So when we are talking about balancing the system, we are talking about the need for balancing, because the electricity market is more or less a planning market, where we try the day before to plan the electricity production and consumption on the day ahead. So that means that when we buy reserve capacities, we do it before this planning sequence of the electricity market, the day ahead market, to secure that we have the necessary reserves. So when we are planning all these, especially these renewable energy sources, but also other production and consumption units are placing their bids in the day ahead market, changing them in the intraday market, that then when we move into the balancing time frame, we are taking over the responsibility as a TSO. So in the balancing market, we are actually having production and consumption meet at all times during this operational hour. This is done by different ancillary services, and I will get back to the different services, but what I want to illustrate with this graph is that the way of doing this is that we have different services which provide different functions. So we have some very quick services which need to respond very fast, but not for a very long time. Then we have services who have a little longer time to respond, but must also be activated for a longer time, and so forth. So the important thing is here to say is that what you see here is that you probably have a balancing service that fits different technologies. Some technologies really like the fast and quick activation, but the duration of the activation can be an issue. So when we talk about these balancing services and the balancing requirements, the important thing is to, as a new market player or a market player having some kind of asset who might participate in these markets, there are more or less two important things to acknowledge. What response time will say, how quickly can the unit turn up and down in its consumption or production, and the timing of that, how long, for how long can this unit be either turned off or turned on. That is the main part to be aware of, because if you have a very quick asset, then you can probably participate in all the balancing services if you can also be activated for a long time. If you can only be activated for a short time, but you can do it very quick, then you can participate in what we call frequency. So frequent services, where you are responding to the frequency in the net or in the grid, and then delivering power according to that frequency. When you have acknowledged the response time and the time period for the activation, then you by looking at the size, you can be pre-qualified for participating in these markets, and that will create some business opportunities for you. So for the next few slides, I have collected some information on these different services. I won't go into detail with these 3 slides, but you can have a look at them and view the response time, the activation time, and also the bit size, because there are some differences among these balancing services according to the bit size or the minimum bit size. So this slide is more on the technical requirements. What are you supposed to live up to, and what do we expect? This slide shows the market potentials. What kind of market structures are we having right now, and what structures are we looking into? There are also in this slide highlighted the expected or some average historical prices based on 2019-2020 prices. For 2021 and also 2022, prices have increased rapidly, also as Kristian mentioned. And the last slide here shows which technologies that delivers these resources today. So these balancing services is reserve capacity. We have a big difference when we talk about capacity reserves and energy and the energy delivery on the later of that. So Energinet buys these resources as a securing. We are securing the market by having these resources, and then they are activated when needed. So and that is actually what is happening in the last part of this figure, that Energinet is activating energy resources to balance the market. This is what we call the regulating power market, regulerkraftmarked in Danish. So this is the MFR reserve that is activated. This regulating power market stems from both reserve capacity, but also free bids submitted by market players. For now, we have a regulating or Nordic regulating power market, meaning that we have a common market such that balancing needs in Denmark can be solved by balancing capacity or balancing energy from Sweden and Norway if there is transmission capacity between the 2 areas. So we are moving towards a new Nordic energy activation market. This market is supposed to be implemented over the coming year, and the primary thing or the primary idea of this common new Nordic energy activation market is to implement 15-minute time resolution. We need that in order to implement or to engage in the common European energy activation platform for regulating power, also called MARI. When we are moving from hourly time resolution to 15-minute time resolution, we need automated activation processes instead of manual activation processes. And that is the main idea or the main background for having this new market instead of the existing regulating power market. We are also on the capacity side engaging in common Nordic markets. We are working on a common Nordic AFR capacity market and a common Nordic MFR capacity market. And the idea with having these common markets is to utilize the resources across borders, such that that we can improve social welfare by actually using the cheapest resources across the borders. When implementing this new Nordic energy activation market, we are also moving away from the existing regulating power market, regulerkraftmarket, which means that we are also moving away from what we know as specialregulering, special regulation, counter trade today. We have had severe amounts of counter trade on especially the Danish-German border over the last years. And as a consequence of this new Nordic energy activation market, but also when we move to the European market, MARI, it won't be possible to handle this structural counter trade within the platforms. This means that Energinet has applied or sent a new methodology for counter trade, which has been approved by the Danish NRA, meaning that the counter trade will move from the regulating power market to intraday. This means that instead of using the regulating power market, we will handle and buy the needed counter trade in intraday. This the counter trade is rather structural and planned, so that means that we know a long time before real time what is supposed to be procured. So this procurement will take place D-1 when the intraday market opens. And then if we have unexpected amounts or adjusted amounts, then this will be traded up until the gate closure time in the intraday market. This implementation will be gradually, meaning that it will start during May and June in this coming year. And after and then the amounts will gradually be larger, and from 2024 all counter trade will be bought in the intraday market. That was it for me.
That's perfect timing. Perfect timing. I can see already a question from Peter. He's asking, Line, did the minimum bid size for some of the solutions change during last month? He's referring to the FCR /D and FCR/N, which has a minimum of 0.1 megawatts.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think I had that changed in the slide, but that's correct. For FCRD, the minimum bid size will change or has changed to 0.1.
Okay, thank you. And do anyone else have a question for Line? Maybe I have one. Have you seen an increase in the prices of these ancillary services or flexibility solutions in the last months as well?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Yeah.
Especially the reserves, which contains a lot of energy when they are activated. They are very sensitive, or can be, at least for some assets, sensitive to the spot price. So the prices in these reserve markets, we see variations that's correlated to the spot prices.
Okay, so I guess it's an extra good meaning in regards to providing these flexibility solutions, and there's really a carrot to go after there. And one last question: have you also seen an increase in these consumer flexibility solutions? Do you see more actors providing these solutions nowadays, or how's it looking there?
Unfortunately not. We are having more market players on the consumption side being interested in this frequency, the very fast services, because the amount of energy there is very, very small, which means that you won't it won't affect the comfort when you deliver these services. But for the AFR and the MFR, which contains more energy, we still miss the consumption side. And the thing is that it is very difficult or it can be difficult, that's at least our interpretation, that it can be difficult for these kind of assets to price this flexibility, but also to be without energy for up to an hour, which is what these services demand for. When we move to the new platforms and we have this 15-minute resolution, it might become easier. But it is if you are only able to deliver or be flexible for like 15 minutes, then you will have then you will have to turn on and off all the time, and that doesn't make sense if you have a production unit or some kind of process.
Okay, thank you for that, Line. I will move on to Per, if he's ready with his presentation.
Yes, I hope so.
That's perfect, Per. I can see the slides.
You can see the slides and it looks okay. That's good.
It looks good. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me in for this webinar here. I will try to tell a little about the activities here in Neogrid, where we are, among different things, are working a lot with heat pumps and trying to make a business out of operating a pool of heat pump. So the agenda for my presentation here is just a brief introduction to what is the status on the heat pumps on the market? How do we actually connect to them? What kind of businesses are Neogrid looking for when we are working with heat pumps? And then a little more about the flexibility from a heat pump, because it's a very essential parameter in order to understand what kind of businesses that are possible. Then I'll tell a little about the control strategies when we have a pool of heat pump. And then last, I can tell a little about where are we right now here at Neogrid, what kind of barriers do we see in order to make it simple to operate a pool of heat pump, and what is Neogrid's business strategies. So Neogrid is a company a little more than 10 years old, working out of Aalborg, and our main activities are control and monitoring of energy installations. And the installations in building we are mainly focusing on there are those supplied with a heat pump, but also supplied with a district heating. Our main business right now is monitoring and control of apartment blocks, more than 400 we have today, mainly supplied with district heating, where we are with our preheat product, which is model and prognosis based control, giving all the household owners there and saving on their energy bill, and cloud connected control where we can monitor the status of the building and warn all the owners if there are some issues. Then in general, we are working a lot with IoT meters and stuff like this, collecting data, visualizing them, and so on. And then, of course, what's on the agenda today is our aggregate activities, where we operate a pool of heat pumps. We have a long background in participation in various types of research projects within heat pump operation and control, starting back from 2011. And we have actually demonstrated some of the possibilities with pool control of a heat pump in some of these projects here, together with the Danish Balance Responsible Party, now called Centrica. And I will take some of the results from there, and also what kind of developments and what kind of progress have been done since then. A lot of our research work has also been in trying to standardize the heat pump interfaces and communications, because this is a very essential part in order to make it easy for a third party like us, for example, to operate a heat pump. So let's dig a little into how do we connect to heat pump. So typically the setup in a building, if there's a heat pump installed, is that we will come out with our gateway, which is the box shown there, to try to make a legacy heat pump online if it's not already cloud connected. And then we would like to have a connection to the electricity meter in the building, and hopefully also an electricity meter connected to the heat pump. Then, of course, we would also like, if there is, for example, an energy meter measuring the amount of energy delivered by the heat pump. And then the final and most important task is, of course, how do we communicate with the heat pump? And there can be many ways of communicating with the legacy heat pump. It can be a simple relay control where we can block the heat pump, but it can also be a more advanced Modbus communication and different type of connection to a heat pump. Then there's also shown here this voltage controller part here, because this is a way that we actually can manipulate the internal heat curve of a heat pump by manipulating the outdoor temperature sensor. We would also like, if we are doing our advanced control in the building, to have a local temperature sensor in the building. So let's dig a little into what kind of business opportunities do we see with the heat pumps. They are split up here in some categories of services. The first one here is the very simple one, and always of interest for a new customer as soon as we get a heat pump connected. It's simply to operate the heat pump outside the very expensive hours. And there are both expensive hours due to spot prices, but also due to the variable tariffs in Denmark. And then the next thing of service we can deliver immediately, and that's also important, is the monitoring and alarm, simply to make sure that based on our data that we collect, we can say to the customer that the heat pump is running fine. Then we are typically also getting our setup a little more advanced so that we can deliver something we call our preheat optimized operation. This is a more advanced model and prognosis-based control of the heat pump, so that we take into account the indoor comfort level, the indoor temperature, and so on, and make sure that we utilize all the sun power as much as we can. Then for some more advanced installations, there is a kind of a local optimization, so that we try to use as much as possible of local power production, for example, from PVs and so on. Then what we are talking a little more about here today is when we have enough of heat pumps, then of course there are services towards the electricity markets. And this is the type of pool control of heat pumps. Another thing that's becoming more relevant from some DSOs are services we can deliver to them, where we can reduce some bottlenecks in the low voltage grid mainly. So let's dig a little into the flexibility of a heat pump installation, because this is a very important part of being able to deliver these kind of services. So if we take take a look of a standard building and its characteristics, then here listed some of the important parameters which very much determine the flexibility that's available from building. And it has something to do, is there an accumulation tank in the building, because this will increase the flexibility available. Is there a tank for domestic hot water? Then this is also an advantage. And then the type of heat pump, it's important if it's on-off controlled heat pump or if it's a frequency controlled one. And then another characteristic of the heat pump is if it's a ground source or an air-to-air heat pump. Ground source heat pumps are more reliable to control. They do not require the defrosting in the winter time. And this also makes the flexibility available a little more precise. And then, of course, some of the characteristics of the building envelope. What is the heat capacity in the building? How much concrete is used inside the building? And this is an important parameter for flexibility. And then, of course, also the dimensioning of the heat pump. It varies a lot if the heat pump is dimensioned to deliver enough heat at 0 degrees outside, or maybe at minus 10 degrees outside. And we can see a lot of different installations regarding this dimensioning temperature. Then, of course, also the time constant in the building is an important parameter for estimating the flexibility. And then the user comfort requirements inside the building. What can they accept? How much variation of indoor temperature can they accept, and for how many hours can we, for example, shut off the heat pump before the floor is getting too cold, and so on. And then there's something about the thermostat settings, if they are limiting the heat supply in the building so that we can't overheat the building. This also means something about the flexibility. And then floor heating, of course, the more floor heating, then the more slower system you have, but then you also have a longer duration of the flexibility. So this is just some analysis example of what the previous slide actually means, and I'll not go too much into detail with this, but this is just to give an idea that there are many different parameters that influence this flexibility, and you need to understand them quite well in order to estimate what is the flexibility out of a certain building. And one thing that's a little important to notice here is for example that if you have a big accumulation tank, for example with some PCM material, phase shifting material or salt storage, then the capacity of such a tank can more or less be equal to the heat capacity you have of the building alone. So a big accumulation tank especially if it's with PCM material, can really increase the flexibility. So here's something more about the flexibility, which I'll go a little into. It shows here that the flexibility for a typical day in October, and here you can see that I can, for example, shut off the heat pump completely for more than 1 hour here, actually 100 minutes here, before we have a comfort problem in the house. I can reduce the power of the heat pump with 25 or 50% and so on for many hours before it is a problem with the indoor temperature comfort. The challenge here is that maybe it's not possible for me to reduce the power of the heat pump in such steps here, but only on off. This duration curve here shows how much I can reduce the power of the heat pump and still delivering comfort. It's a different duration curve if I want to show for a specific house how much I can increase the heat pump power. In many houses it's not possible because it's not possible to overheat a building actually. So some important characteristics for the flexibilities is also, like we heard in the previous presentation, for how long time can such a service be delivered and how fast can it be delivered, and this you can see in the duration curve figure here. But please remember that this is only valid for this specific day with this weather condition here. For example, in the winter time, we can have a much different picture, and if the heat pump is not is a little underdimensioned, then it's maybe required that it's actually running 24 hours a day, and then there's no or very little flexibility. So another thing that's important for when we come into a house is some of the services here, and here's just a simple figure that can come out of collecting a lot of data from a heat pump installation. It's the daily COP, and it's a very important parameter to have shown and for the heat pump owner to be aware of, because it actually tells you how well is my heat pump running. And if you are able to get daily values of electricity consumption and energy delivered from the heat pump, then you can calculate this, and then you can track very precisely if the heat pump is actually running fine. And here is just shown with the borderline here when we started our control to compare if our optimized control has any impact on the COP or not. But let's jump a little to the control strategy when we talk about a pool of heat pump, which is important, of course, when we want to deliver services to the electricity market. So we have two principles that we are supporting when we talk about controlling a pool of heat pump. In general, we normally are only operating by having a direct connection to each heat pump. So it's we are not supporting the indirect control via price signal or something. And this has the advantage with our direct control that those rebounds effects, we can fully control how they look like. Another stepping into the different control methods, we have two different control methods. We can control the pool of heat pump like a kind of a swarm of heat pump, which we are controlling, or we can control them via flex offers. Flex offers is a mathematical way we are using if we want to describe the flexibility available from a heat pump. The advantage with FlexOffer is that we can describe flexibility from any kind of flexible resource and then mathematically combine them and get a very big pool of flexible energy that can be operated. When we talk about a swarm controller here, it's only designed for a pool of heat pump. One thing that's important to notice here, as I told you a little about before, is that the flexibility typical from our pool of heat pump is not symmetrical, meaning that it's easier for us to shut off the heat pump than it is to get more started. And this is something to do that it's not typically easy to overheat a building to increase the comfort temperature. Then the flexibility is, of course, very much dependent on the weather outside, because there's a baseline of operation of the heat pumps which we are building upon. And if we talk about how much flexibility is actually available, then if we have a heat pump with a 3-4 kilowatt electricity consumption, then from time to time we have up to maybe 25% in this range available for flexibility. Here you can see a display of our swarm controller. There's about 50 heat pumps here connected. And we put them in a graph like this, where we have some nominal temperatures shown here, meaning that the heat pump should operate within 0 to 1. This is our normalized comfort range in the building. And they can be in two different states, the heat pumps. They can be red, meaning that they are turned on. And they can have a circle on, meaning that they are turned on and locked. And this means that we are not allowed to stop them because there are some run and rest time constraints that we need to honor. Also for heat pumps that are turned off, yeah, some of them can, of course, be turned on if there's no circle around. And the case here is that no one is available to be turned on. So this is I think a simple dashboard showing the possibilities for the heat pumps. I will jump into the Pedersen strategies where we are working right now. There's challenge in getting heat pumps on board. We have talked a little about that all the legacy heat pumps, they are different. They need different hardware in order to be connected. And there's little standardization about how to actually communicate with the heat pump as a third-party actor. Delivering service to the electricity market requires a significant amount of heat pump in order for us to have a robust pool to be pre-qualified at Energinet. Delivering primary service from a pool of heat pump is still a kind of research project. It's not easy within seconds to deliver solutions from heat pump. A business model when we are operating as an aggregator here in these electricity markets is also quite complicated and long, because there is a balance responsible party included. There's us, then there's a heat pump owner, and we all need to share part of what we get out of participating in this market here, and it must be compared to what can the house owner get by a standalone optimization delivered from us. We need to be better as an aggregator than if you just bought a standalone optimized solution. Then there are some limited markets. The regulating for the regulating power. So we need to operate close with a balancing responsible party in order to be able to pool our heat pumps together with something else in order to make the bid size big enough. And the DSO market there is really not existing in many places in Denmark right now. So we are working hard to get a robust pool of heat pumps that can be pre-qualified at Energinet. And the strategy for us is that this will take place here in this heating seasons if we are successful. And we have various type of heat pumps that are being connected now and being tested in order to be qualified for this. So I think we are running out of time now, Anders.
We're running a bit out of time, but
I'm also done.
Yeah, perfect. Good timing. But it's very interesting what you're working with, Pierre, and we love to have you in the project, and it's very nice. Well, one thing I was thinking about, maybe some others have a question. I can see Schröder. Sasha, how do you determine the flexibility potential for multi-unit buildings? Do you communicate with the house owner only, or also with tenants of individual apartments, offices?
Yeah, we are mainly operating with single-family houses because in Denmark there are not so many multi-storage buildings supplied by heat pump. But you need somehow an agreement with the tenants or building owner. What is his comfort requirements? Because the flexibility can only be derived if you are allowed to change the operating schedule or time slots of a heat pump, meaning that this will give some more fluctuations of your indoor temperature level. And some tenants, some house owners are very sensitive to this. Others are fine with plus minus 1 degree or something. And then the challenge is for us to get this defined and being able to operate on it.
Okay. Because yeah, I also have another question for you, Pierre.
Yeah.
You said it's not possible to overheat the buildings. Is it because of the comfort level, or is it because of the structure of the building, or?
No, it's more because when we are getting connected to a heat pump, then inside some thermostats and other things that are controlling the temperature in the different rooms. And if they are set to 22 degrees, we cannot overheat to 22.5, for example, because the thermostat will block for this increase. So this means that our dynamic operation for flexibility is only downwards, not upwards. But if we can make an agreement with the house owner that he should increase some of his dominating thermostats in the main rooms, then we are able to get a much higher dynamic range. So it depends a little on the heat installation setup in the building and how much we can cooperate with the tenants and house owners.
Okay, because I think it's also very interesting to look at like these phase change batteries that is connected with the heat pumps, because here you have more flexibility, so to say, like 4 times the capacity of a normal water storage. So it's very interesting to see like the development there as well. And I guess you're also looking into that in the case.
And they are getting cheaper and better. And this is, of course, a way to get a very useful amount of flexibility.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Per. And I don't think there's any more questions out there. And I see a lot of people have already went to get something to eat. So I will just say thank you so much for your presentation, Pierre, and thank you so much for Florian and Kristian and Line for their presentations as well. And I'm gonna stop the recording here, and then we will post the recording afterwards for you to share out there. And also we're going to share the presentations with the participants today. But thank you so much, and have a nice day, and thank you for coming today.